a devoted nurse, tended to a wealthy businessman in a deep coma. But when he unexpectedly regained consciousness, an extraordinary event unfolded. The fluorescent lights in East Ridge Elite Hospital hummed softly as Nurse Emily Hayes navigated its pristine corridors. She had been employed there for nearly 2 years, yet this day carried an odd vibe. Receiving an unexpected summons to meet Dr. Thompson, the chief neurologist stirred an uneasy sensation within her. Was she facing reprimand? Or perhaps a transfer to another unit? She inhaled deeply before softly knocking on the polished oak door. "Come in," a voice responded. Stepping inside, she found Dr. Thompson by the window, arms crossed behind him. His sharp gaze, as ever, overlooked the urban landscape. The room carried aromas of antiseptic and premium leather, with an atmosphere heavier than typical. "Emily," he finally uttered, facing her. His tone was firm and authoritative. "We have a case requiring specialized attention, but this assignment isn't suited for the faint-hearted." Emily furrowed her brow. "Not for the timid. What kind of patient?" she inquired cautiously. Dr. Thompson observed her momentarily, then gestured toward a thick medical dossier on his desk. "Alexander Reed," he announced. Emily inhaled sharply. Alexander Reed? The Alexander Reed? Even if the name wasn't immediately familiar, the folder's cover revealed all. A grayscale news clipping depicted a horrific vehicle collision from a year prior. The metropolis's youngest magnate had suffered a catastrophic mishap. His luxury vehicle plunged off an overpass in the night, leaving him in a profound unconscious state since then. His reputation had dominated headlines. Alexander Reed, the formidable, distant CEO of Reed Industries, who built an empire by 32. Now, he resembled a phantom trapped in his own form. His relatives rarely visit, Dr. Thompson continued, and most staff merely fulfill their obligations. But Alexander Reed demands someone truly dedicated, someone who will sincerely nurture him. Emily nibbled her lip. She detected hesitation in his words. "And you think I'm that individual?" Dr. Thompson affirmed with a nod. "Yes." Emily drew a silent breath. It was a demanding role, caring for a man who might never revive. A man whose fortune and influence once dominated countless lives. Yet inwardly, she already knew her response. "I'll take it on." Dr. Thompson's mouth formed a straight line, but his eyes gleamed with subtle endorsement. "Excellent. Your shift begins this evening." The exclusive suite on the facility's top level felt eerily hushed as Emily entered. Unlike the stark, impersonal ambience of standard wards, this one exuded luxury. Spacious layout, subdued illumination, mahogany furnishings, and at its center lay Alexander Reed. She drew in a breath upon seeing him. Even amid the tubing, ventilators sustaining his respiration, and his immobile frame, he appeared striking. Defined chin, dark lashes against pale complexion, broad frame visible beneath the medical gown. If not for his utter stillness, he might have seemed merely asleep. But this was no ordinary slumber. This was a man ensnared in perpetual void. Emily swallowed hard and approached, adjusting his drip line before grasping the prepared warm sponge. She hesitated briefly before delicately applying it to his skin. The moment contact occurred, an inexplicable chill coursed through her spine, a sensation she couldn't pinpoint. As though he perceived her presence, as if buried in his subconscious, he was aware. A faint tone from his cardiac monitor pierced the room's quiet, consistent and rhythmic. Emily dismissed the peculiar vibe and proceeded, tenderly cleansing his limbs, his torso, maintaining his hygiene and dignity. "I suppose you have no say in this, do you?" she murmured almost involuntarily. No response. "I'll interpret that as agreement." A faint grin crossed her face, despite her efforts to suppress it. Days evolved into routine. Morning and evening, Emily would bathe him, change his linens, and monitor his vitals. But soon, it transcended mere medical duties. She began conversing with him, recounting her experiences, describing the vista from his window. "You ought to try the cafeteria meals, Alexander. They're dreadful, even for a tycoon like you. I doubt you'd tolerate it." No reply. "I'm uncertain why I bother chatting with you. Perhaps I just like the sound of my own voice." No reply. No reply. Or maybe you're actually hearing me. The cardiac monitor's steady pulses seemed to echo back, and perhaps, just perhaps, he was. Emily hummed a soft melody while dipping a fresh sponge into the tepid water. The unchanging tranquility of Alexander's upscale ward had become familiar over the weeks. The persistent beeps of the monitor, the gentle drip of the infusion, all blended into the backdrop. She leaned across the bed, carefully wiping Alexander's features, her touch gentle yet precise. "You know," she remarked softly, "I've heard that comatose individuals can still perceive sounds. So honestly, you're the worst conversationalist I've encountered." No reaction, of course. She exhaled, shaking her head. "That's okay. I've grown accustomed to monologues lately." She proceeded to his chin when a subtle shift occurred. She gasped. Had she imagined it? She froze, staring at his hand. Nothing stirred. His digits remained limp on the crisp sheets. Emily let out a nervous chuckle, shaking her head. "Wonderful. Now I'm hallucinating. Maybe I need the bed rest." Yet the odd intuition lingered, and over the following days, it recurred. The next instance, she was adjusting his cushion. She wasn't focused when she sensed it, a featherlight brush against her forearm. Her gaze snapped downward. Alexander's hand had shifted marginally, but sufficiently to jolt her. "Alexander," she whispered, scarcely realizing she'd uttered his name. Quiet, the familiar rhythmic beeps from the device. She placed her palm over his, feeling his warmth, his immobility, his potential stirring. Nothing. Was it her imagination, or was change afoot? Emily couldn't shake the notion, so she confided in Dr. Thompson. He stirred. The physician arched a skeptical brow. "I think so," Emily confirmed. "At first, I assumed it was a figment, but it persists." His fingers twitch. His hand inches slightly. "It's minor, but it's there." Dr. Thompson reclined in his seat, pondering deeply. "We'll run diagnostics," he declared eventually. "But temper your hopes, Emily. It could merely be reflexive spasms." Emily nodded, but inwardly she disagreed. She sensed genuine progress, and when the results arrived, she wasn't surprised. "There's heightened cerebral activity," Dr. Thompson reported. "His neural reflexes are more robust." Her pulse quickened. "So, he's emerging from it." Dr. Thompson hesitated. "Not definitively. It might indicate various outcomes, but it's encouraging." It wasn't the assurance she craved, but it sufficed. That night, beside his bed, Emily conversed with Alexander more extensively than usual. "I'm unsure if you're audible to this, but instinct says you are," she murmured. She studied his countenance, his resolute traits, still motionless. But for the initial time, she felt companionship in the space. Thus she shared. She narrated her routine, the frustrating cases, the rude specialist on the lower level who always swiped her brew. She recounted her youth, the quaint village of her upbringing, her lifelong aspiration to nurse. And as she spoke, oblivious, deep in his comatose realm, Alexander was attuned. Morning rays filtered through the ward's expansive panes, casting a tender glow on Alexander Reed's inert form. The unvarying tones of the cardiac monitor echoed the silence, as they had for the past year. Emily positioned herself by the bedside, rolling up her sleeves. This was just another shift, another routine cleansing. Another session addressing someone who might never respond. She immersed a warm sponge in the basin, wrung it out, and commenced gently wiping Alexander's chest, her motions accurate and meticulous. "You know, Alexander," she whispered, a slight smile emerging, "I was considering adopting a pet. I need a companion who'll engage and not just recline there disregarding me constantly." "Quiet," she sighed. "All right, that's harsh. I was merely attempting conversation. She extended to his limb, gliding the sponge across his skin, her fingers grazing his wrist, and then his fingers clasped her wrist. Emily halted abruptly. A sharp intake of air lodged in her throat as she fixated on his hand. The grip was feeble, tentative, uncertain, but tangible. Oh heavens! Her heart pounded fiercely, her pulse thundering. She wanted to dismiss it as another involuntary reflex, a meaningless contraction. But it wasn't, for then Alexander's eyes fluttered open. For an instant, Emily was paralyzed, breathless, thoughtless. She had spent months scrutinizing those sealed lids, seeking any flicker of life. And now, those profound azure eyes gazed straight at her. They appeared disoriented, hazy, vulnerable but alive. Alexander's lips parted. His voice rasped, nearly inaudible but genuine. Emily. Emily's frame tensed. Her knees buckled slightly. Her respiration hitched between disbelief and sheer astonishment. He spoke. He awoke. The impossible had transpired. She barely registered the basin tipping from her grasp, water spilling across the spotless floor as she staggered back. Oh heavens! Her instincts surged. She pivoted and slammed the panic alarm on the wall. A shrill siren blared through the corridors. Seconds later, the door burst open, and a team of physicians and caregivers surged in, led by Dr. Thompson. "What's the situation?" Dr. Thompson demanded crisply as he approached the bed, already assessing Alexander's indicators. Emily's voice quivered. He grasped my hand. He opened his eyes. She glanced back at Alexander, still struggling to comprehend. His chest rose and fell erratically, his eyes darting about the room as if orienting himself, grasping the events. He wasn't fully alert. Not yet, but he was there. Dr. Thompson's expression shifted from shock to decisive command. Some of the neurology squad immediately. Caregivers bustled, their murmurs blending in awe as they initiated assessments. The space became a whirlwind of activity, but Emily couldn't avert her gaze from Alexander. Then, as if detecting her scrutiny, his eyes locked with hers again. And this time, he held the connection. Chaos ensued. The specialists interrogated him, flashed beams into his pupils, evaluated his reflexes. But amid it all, Alexander's attention repeatedly returned to Emily. She advanced tentatively, swallowing hard. "Alexander," she murmured, "do you remember anything?" He regarded her, blinking deliberately. A prolonged hush extended between them. Then his digits stirred once more, and before she could react, he extended for her hand. Deliberately, gradually but intentionally, his palm enveloped hers, his hold fragile yet resolute, as if he'd known her eternally. Emily inhaled sharply. Dr. Thompson glanced up sharply. "Alexander, are you familiar with this woman?" Alexander didn't answer immediately. He furrowed his brow, his gaze unwavering on Emily. "I'm uncertain," he whispered, his tone hoarse from disuse. "But it feels like I should be." A tremor ran down Emily's spine because although Alexander Reed had no recollection of her, something profound within him did. The weeks following Alexander's remarkable revival brimmed with examinations, rehabilitation, and incessant inquiries. Specialists marveled at his swift recovery. Bodily, he was weakened but progressing. His atrophied muscles, rigid from a year's inactivity, regained vigor through targeted therapy. But mentally, that posed a separate challenge. Alexander retained no memory of the incident, and the more they probed for details, the more irritated he became. "Alexander, let's revisit this," Dr. Thompson urged in one session. "What's your final recollection?" Alexander rubbed his forehead, his expression strained. I'm drawing blanks. Where were you headed? What occupied you?" Alexander exhaled sharply. "I've said it's fragments. Fleeting images. Elaborate on those." A lengthy pause. Then Alexander closed his eyes, his forehead creased. "I remember a sensation. His words were measured, hesitant, like peril loomed. Emily, who had been quietly observing from the side, stiffened. Alexander proceeded, his grip tightening. There was a roadway, glaring beams, then oblivion. Just void. Dr. Thompson sighed. It's common for trauma survivors to suppress distressing recollections. They may resurface naturally, but presently prioritize healing. Alexander nodded, but Emily noted the frustration in his clenched jaw. And deep down, she couldn't dispel the suspicion that foul play was involved. That night, compelled by her thoughts, Emily accessed the facility's archives. She had perused Alexander's records previously, but now she scrutinized every nuance with fresh perspective. And there it was, an oversight from before. The accident probe report indicated Alexander's brakes were sabotaged. Sabotaged? Not worn, not defective, but tampered with. A chill coursed through her. This wasn't a tragic mishap. Someone had intended his demise, and he remained unaware. With a shaky inhalation, she closed the dossier. She had to inform him because if an attempt had been made once, it could recur. Alexander's recuperation advanced astonishingly. Within mere weeks, he transitioned from bedridden to upright, self-feeding, and articulating complete thoughts. Now, via physiotherapy, he was relearning ambulation. And throughout, Emily remained by his side. For each stride, each setback, each moment of surrender, she motivated him onward. "I can't manage this," Alexander muttered, clutching the support rails as he attempted to rise. "Yes, you can," Emily asserted resolutely, positioned beside him. "You've come this distance, Alexander. Persist." He turned toward her, panting. She wasn't offering empty platitudes. She authentically believed in him, fostering his own faith. With a determined exhalation, he advanced another step. Emily's visage illuminated. "That's the way." For the first time post-awakening, Alexander grinned. Not out of courtesy, not obligation, but because he felt vital again, and he recognized precisely whom to credit. Emily differed from others. She didn't view him with sympathy. She didn't perceive him as an affluent invalid confined to a bed. She saw him as Alexander, purely, and that drew him to her. Her presence lightened burdens. Her words pulled him from lingering shadows in his psyche. And her touches, a supportive hand on his arm, steadying him during walks, rearranging his cushion, evoked an indescribable spark on his skin. One dusk, after an exhaustive rehab session, Emily suggested a promenade in the facility's courtyard. "Fresh breeze could do you good," she proposed, beaming. Alexander consented, but he hadn't anticipated how transformed the world would feel beyond those clinical confines. The crisp twilight air, rustling foliage, the lunar glow softly illuminating the scene. For the first time, he felt human again, not afflicted, not an enigma with erased memories, just himself. And alongside Emily, they ambled leisurely, Emily linking her arm with his for balance. Initially, Alexander assumed it was professional, but then he noticed her fingers lingering on his wrist, her furtive glances when she believed him oblivious, her subtle breath hitch when he drew near. And suddenly, he realized she experienced it too. That magnetic pull, that unspoken connection binding them. They paused near a modest bench, moonlight casting patterns across the grounds. Alexander faced her, his heart racing for an unfamiliar cause. Emily parted her lips to speak, but before words emerged, Alexander clasped her hand. Her eyes widened in surprise, locking with his. "I have no memories of my prior existence," he admitted, voice hushed. "But one certainty stands out." Emily swallowed. "What?" He squeezed her fingers. "I trust you." The statement was straightforward, yet for him, it encompassed everything. And from Emily's intake of breath, her flush under the moonbeams, her refusal to withdraw, she comprehended. And for the moment, that was sufficient. The night was restless. Alexander tossed in his bed, his frame still vulnerable, but his mind turbulent. Then a flash. A torrent of recollection surged like a breached barrier. The avenue was shadowy. Rain pelted the glass fiercely, his blades struggling to clear it. Alexander gripped the wheel tightly, his thoughts foggy from the recent conference. An unease persisted. Abruptly, dazzling headlights blazed, hurtling toward him. A dark SUV swerved into his lane at maximum velocity. Alexander yanked the steering, tires skidding on slick pavement. The brakes, they failed. His pulse thundered as he desperately sought control. And just prior to impact, his gaze darted roadside. A shadowy figure observed. Then utter blackness. Alexander's eyes snapped open, his breaths ragged and shallow. His heart surged, perspiration clinging to him. The vision was vivid, authentic, and now he grasped the reality. This was no accident, an assassination attempt. Emily detected the alteration the instant she entered his suite the following dawn. He was transformed, his customary wry smile absent, his posture rigid, his hands balled. "Alexander?" she queried softly. "What's amiss?" His piercing azure eyes met hers, brimming with newfound resolve. "I remembered something." Emily's gut twisted. "The collision?" He nodded curtly. "It wasn't a collision, Emily. My brakes were tampered with, and a figure stood roadside, witnessing my vehicle's plunge." Emily shuddered, her suspicions confirmed. But the enigma persisted. Who and for what motive? Emily and Alexander devoted the ensuing days to investigation, poring over Alexander's ledgers, corporate files, and any clue hinting at enmity. Then they unearthed it. A financial transaction, a substantial sum dispatched days pre-incident. The recipient, a notorious felon specializing in staged wrecks. The sender, Marcus Reed, Alexander's half-sibling. The revelation struck like thunder. It was him, Alexander whispered, bracing the desk. Marcus always harbored jealousy, convinced Alexander was the favored heir, inheriting their patriarch's empire while he languished in obscurity. And now he'd sought to eliminate Alexander outright. Emily's heart constricted. "Alexander, he intended your death." Alexander's jaw set. "And now I'll ensure he pays." That dusk, Alexander and Emily orchestrated a confrontation with Marcus in a dimly illuminated chamber within the Reed mansion. Marcus lounged in an armchair, twirling a tumbler of scotch as Alexander and Emily arrived. Well, Marcus smirked. "The ghost rises." Alexander's eyes blazed. "Why, Marcus?" Marcus savored his sip leisurely. "You know precisely why." Emily stepped up. "You attempted fratricide. For what? Wealth? Dominion?" Marcus's smirk faded. "For what was rightfully mine," he snarled. "You were perpetually the golden child, the one handed the kingdom, the one pampered. Well, I grew weary of biding time." Emily's fury mounted. But before she could retort, the portal swung open, admitting 2 law enforcers. Marcus paled. "Marcus Reed," one proclaimed, "you're under arrest for attempted homicide." Marcus whirled toward Alexander, terror etching his features. "You orchestrated this." Alexander tilted his head. "No, sibling. You did." Marcus was escorted away in restraints, spewing futile threats. As the door slammed shut, profound stillness enveloped the space. Alexander exhaled deeply, his tension easing for the first time since revival. It concluded. Justice prevailed, and he was liberated at last. The Reed mansion had always been grand, opulent, and austere, a fortress of affluence forged across generations of dominance. But this evening, as Emily stepped into the softly glowing dining hall, it seemed altered, cozier, more intimate. Flickering candle flames danced across the elegantly laid table by the vast panes overlooking the skyline. The fragrance of fresh blooms permeated, and a chilled wine bottle rested beside 2 impeccably arranged settings. Emily inhaled sharply. "Alexander, what's this?" she inquired, pivoting to him. Alexander positioned behind her, hands pocketed, his azure eyes tender yet fervent. "Dinner," he replied plainly. "Just us." Emily's chest constricted. The past weeks had been whirlwind. From his convalescence to unraveling the incident's truth to his kin's apprehension. But now, with turmoil resolved, only this instant remained. And somehow, that intimidated more. As they dined, Emily couldn't overlook Alexander's gaze, as if committing every detail to memory, as if she were something fragile yet invaluable. "You're quiet," she noted, offering a teasing grin. "That's perilous," she quipped. He didn't chuckle. Instead, he leaned in, his stare intense. "Emily, do you realize how many abandoned me during that coma?" Her grin vanished. She knew. She'd witnessed it. How his kin deemed him burdensome. How alleged allies progressed. His survival through that abyss owed to one who persisted. Because she persisted. "But you didn't," Alexander murmured. "You were there daily. You nurtured me when I couldn't even blink. When others label me lost, you refused to abandon me." Emily's throat tightened. She'd never framed it thus. She'd merely followed her conscience. But for Alexander, it signified everything. Alexander leaned closer, his fingertips brushing hers across the table. "Emily, I possess all." His voice soft yet resolute. "Fortune, authority, influence, but meaningless without you." As her breath hitched, "Alexander, allow me to conclude," he whispered. His hand fully clasped hers, his thumb tracing languid, soothing patterns on her skin. "I'm unsure how or when it started, but I know that every instant trapped in that coma, you anchored me. You were my beacon amid shadows. Emily, I love you." The declaration struck profoundly, stealing her air. Not because she hadn't reciprocated, but hearing it from him solidified it. Alexander Reed, once immersed in ruthless negotiations, mergers, and power plays, now sat opposite, bearing his soul. And for the first time, Emily experienced something unprecedented, profoundly, wholly, unequivocally cherished. Tears streamed, yet she beamed through them. "Alexander," she whispered, "you can't fathom what that signifies." He extended, tenderly wiping a tear. "Then permit me to demonstrate." And as he drew nearer, resting his brow against hers, Emily knew this was just the commencement. Months elapsed since that pivotal night when Alexander professed his affection for Emily. And in that interval, all transformed. Alexander had fully recuperated, reclaiming his vitality through rigorous sessions and drills. His physique no longer frail, unbound by the wreck that nearly claimed him. And now he was Alexander Reed anew, helm of Reed Industries, presiding in the boardroom with the assurance of a survivor. But one fundamental distinction separated the pre-incident man from today's. This time, he wasn't solitary. This time, he had Emily, and soon, if she consented, she'd be his eternally. The terrace of the Reed mansion bathed in the fading sun's gentle radiance, painting warm amber hues across the panorama. Emily stood at the edge, admiring the breathtaking vista, unaware of impending events. "It's stunning here," she murmured, the breeze tousling her locks. Alexander, behind her, smiled. "Not as stunning as you." She faced him, rolling her eyes playfully. "Smooth, Reed. Very smooth." But her jesting expression faded upon seeing his gaze. Tonight, his eyes held deeper intent, more assured, more eternal. Before she could inquire, he inhaled profoundly. Then, deliberately, he knelt on one knee. Emily gasped. Her hands covered her mouth as Alexander produced a velvet case, revealing the most exquisite diamond ring she'd beheld. An elegant gem set in intricate platinum. But it wasn't the jewel that stunned her. It was him. It was the slight tremor in his voice as he whispered, "Emily, you didn't merely save my existence. You became it." Her heart raced. "Before you, I had it all. Riches, dominance, success. But I lacked essence. I lacked you. You're why I fought back. why I rediscovered myself. And now I yearn to devote my remaining days ensuring you know your worth to me. He proffered the ring, eyes fixed on hers. Emily Hayes, will you marry me? Time halted. Emily couldn't articulate, couldn't inhale. She could only nod fervently, laughter and sobs mingling. Yes, she managed, voice trembling. Yes, Alexander. Endlessly. Yes. Alexander exhaled in relief, sliding the ring onto her finger before enveloping her in his embrace, into his world, into forever. And as their lips met beneath the waning light, Emily knew this was her destiny, perpetually. The Reed mansion never shone brighter than on their nuptial day. The grounds morphed into an enchanting paradise. Ivory blossoms lined the walkways. Twinkling illuminations dangled from majestic elms, and melodic strains wafted as attendees observed in awe. Emily poised at the entrance in an elegant ivory gown, her pulse accelerating. Ready. Sarah, her maid of honor, whispered beside her. Emily drew a steadying breath, gripping her flowers tighter. Then she looked ahead, and there he stood, Alexander at the altar, in classic ebony attire, regarding her as if she alone existed. Her anxieties dissolved. She proceeded down the path with poise. Each pace drew her nearer to perpetuity, and upon reaching him, Alexander took her hands, his eyes radiant with unadulterated, vulnerable adoration. The vows were exchanged, their commitments sealed, not merely verbally, but through the unbreakable tie forged amid every ordeal, every hardship, every instance of unwavering devotion. I now pronounce you man and wife. Cheers erupted as Alexander cupped her face, bestowing the most heartfelt, profound kiss upon her lips. And as the assembly rejoiced, Emily realized this wasn't their story's conclusion. It was the inception. As dusk approached, Alexander and Emily slipped from the festivities, strolling hand in hand through the gardens, embracing their fresh chapter. No more clinics, no more isolation, no more anguish, just them, united eternally. Alexander squeezed her hand gently. You know, he murmured, I thought I possessed everything pre-you. Emily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. And now? He gazed down, his expression tender, devoted, infinite. Now I realize prior holdings pale, for you're the greatest blessing I've known. Emily blinked back emotion, profoundly touched by his sentiment. And as they advanced toward the sun's golden descent, she knew they'd traversed trials, obscurity, near fatal moments. But ultimately, love conquered, and with Alexander at her side, Emily found true serenity. As Alexander and Emily strode hand in hand into their blissful tomorrow, their narrative illustrated something profoundly potent. Love isn't solely about discovering someone, but enduring with them through every adversity. Emily never forsaken Alexander, even when all others did. And ultimately, it was love, not opulence or authority, that genuinely preserved him. If this tale touched your soul, remember to like, share it, and subscribe to Heartwarming Narratives for more inspiring and emotional stories. Enable notifications to never miss a tale that tugs at your heartstrings. Thank you for viewing, and always recall, sometimes the most beautiful romances commence in the most unforeseen manners. Until next time,